So AI is already here. I'm sure we've seen a bunch of stuff out here at Realize Live already. NX and CAD in general has mostly been using rule-driven and user-defined processes for creating and engineering things until recently, where more and more prediction and machine learning is being added over time. This layer of predictive tools learns from prior data and sets you up to do things even faster downstream. Things like generative design allows NX to quickly iterate with just a base level of parameters and inputs from the user. NX, among many other tools, are using AI and machine learning already, and we don't even realize it. For example, the image there is from PowerPoint, I think. It's like, how do you want to set up your design slides here for your presentation? So stuff's everywhere. Among those things are add-ons like Copilot, which is currently in NXX, but I'm sure we'll be seeing that soon in the non-cloud-based version of NX as well. Copilot and others like it are adding to this design space by allowing us to design with language. So I can just talk to the software via a conversational interface and simply describe what I'm trying to accomplish and see what it comes up with to help me along. Obviously, that stuff's not quite in NX yet. It is a little bit in that Copilot where I can type in what I'm trying to do, and NX is going to kind of scrape that online documentation, tell me, here's a step-by-step way to do that using the NX documentation that it has access to. This kind of capability will transform workflows for faster iteration on translating what's in our minds to 3D. Prediction is AI, sort of. It's machine learning mostly, but AI in NX and generally in CAD will become a part of the workflow and add to real-time validation and hopefully eliminating human error. Obviously, trust is a big part of this process, and that is a step that everyone's still working on, trust with AI. And that's going to take some time. Another big thing AI will help with, and is already helping with, is eliminating the tedious design and engineering tasks by integrating those generative tools, using the predictive capabilities, and allowing for intelligent automation. So things we've probably seen in other presentations where we have the select similar capabilities in NX already, or we have the predict commands capability on that right side of our working window, and it just allows us to really quickly get to what we're trying to do, allow NX to select things that we're trying to select, eliminating a lot of that tedious stuff from our workflow. So why is training still important? I mean, AI can do it now, right? Well, this can mean different things to either the individual being trained compared to the company that wants the training to be delivered. For the individual, we're seeking to improve ourselves in some measurable way. In this case, I'm adding NX CAD skills to the engineering or design knowledge that I already carry. I want to make myself more valuable to my specific industry, to my company. For the company, it's a way to gain and retain top talent. It also increases job satisfaction, overall morale, and I'm sure the company is hoping productivity. With NX CAD training, we're acquiring specific skills, allowing for the creation of complex designs and assemblies, and hopefully increasing our knowledge and capabilities in overall engineering and design along the way. Taking a look at things from the trainer's perspective, from my perspective, how am I making sure that I'm always prepared to give the kind of NX CAD training that may be needed? First and foremost, I'm always learning. For example, this week with AI, and before this even. AI is just so important right now in CAD and in everything that we need to figure out what we're going to do with it. What is Siemens already doing with it? And so trying to keep up with what Siemens is doing in here isn't always easy to do. So some of the resources I use to keep up with things like that, and most people can use these resources as well, but things like the support center or online documentation that is provided by Siemens. Some of that may not be the easiest to navigate, but pretty much everything I need to know is being explained hopefully well enough somewhere in that documentation. And I mentioned with the addition of Copilot in NX, this is what that AI is looking through to answer your questions. It's kind of scraping that, regurgitating it out. I also have the Siemens community message boards to turn to where NX may have some kind of expert who has decided graciously to answer the questions that are being posted every day. Usually, if I go there or simply Google my question, another place where AI is shaping the space for searching for stuff quickly, I can usually find a link to an answer to my question that's being provided, and it's on there somewhere with the Siemens community message boards. Other things I can do is attend NX learning events, such as the Early Access program, which I like a lot, that Siemens puts on, as well as this event, Realize Live. So lots of different resources that we have available, and AI is seeping into all of them. Each type of training opportunity allows for a different kind of preparation. If I'm training in person and either on-site or at the company's location, or on-site at the company's location or at my own place of business, I have to make sure that the equipment is known. Do I have computers for everyone to use? Will everyone be able to see my screen somewhere in the room? Can everyone connect to NX properly? There's a lot of aspects of training that you may not consider outside of just what are we trying to learn. I need to be aware of these and how to structure the class based on these differences, especially if I'm delivering something that is on-site or delivering it via remote or setting up online videos where I'm not going to be there and someone's just going to be learning via self-paced capabilities. On-site, of course, will need more introduction time. How will the breaks be handled? How will the closing of the training for the day go? These are the same types of questions I'll be asking for remote training as well, but the answers will most likely be different. This is another aspect where AI can help. I feel like I'm saying this a lot, but the structure and routine of training is exactly where I might turn to AI for quick and great examples on how to lay that out. And say, yes, this will work, no, this won't, feed it some more prompts, things like that. I've been starting to use that as well to help me set up the things that I do for NX training. Obviously, creating a confident routine is very important, as it is easy to get derailed when I'm trying to train a group of people that may or may not be interested in learning what I'm trying to teach them. But having this routine or structure that I'm confident in and can return to can be comforting, no matter what the tangent is that we get into in the class. So understanding how long things generally take to explain or how much time to allow for an activity can be helpful in knowing how much content I can actually add to the training. I always like adding just a little bit more, a little bit too much for the time that I know I have allowed, knowing which things I might be able to cut or skip if I start running out of time. And as I have up there, just practicing, obviously. I mean, I'm telling everybody how to do my job out there, but practice, that's good for everything that we're doing. On to some of the more standard training topics that I would include in almost any NX training. So even if it's not a foundational NX class, obviously if it is, we're including some of the basics like sketching and assemblies and user interface. But I find that even if someone is taking what is supposed to be an advanced NX class, most of the time I'm showing them something in the user interface that they've never seen before, and it's going to change their life now. Or here's this button that we've never heard of inside the sketching environment. And so running through a lot of those essential parts of NX, no matter what style the class is, obviously we're going to focus on it in foundations, but even in advanced class, I'll talk about differences in some of the sketching tools that they may or may not be aware of. A lot of training ends up just being, point to a command and press it and see what happens. And they're like, oh, I didn't know that existed. So it ends up being pretty fun doing that. But one of the big parts of learning NX is explaining and utilizing the NX sketch tool. There is, of course, an old version, quote unquote. The new version is like 6 years old or so, something now. But there's an old version of the sketch environment, a new version of the sketch environment, and there's been a lot of clash with that. And so that's obviously a really big topic of a lot of my training classes, especially if we've had users use the old sketch environment and they're kind of bracing themselves against the new environment or something. Obviously, if they don't know where the old one exists, we won't cover that much. We'll just be like, here's what the sketch does. Don't worry about that other thing people are talking about. But for the new sketcher, the design philosophy in this tool, as with more and more of NX, especially with the added aspects of AI, is the object then action philosophy of designing, rather than, say, action then object way of doing things. And what I mean by that is object then action is I'm selecting the thing I want to manipulate, the object that I'm going to change, and then deciding on what that action is going to be. So the way NX is starting to set up its user interface and has been doing for a while now, it's especially clear in the new Sketcher environment, is that I'm just grabbing sketch objects, and then NX is going to tell me what I can do and what I can't do to that. It might even start suggesting this, utilizing AI in this space a lot more as far as that object and action. Whereas the old workflow was, what do I want to do? I want to draw a line. Okay, I'm going to click on the line and draw it, and then what I'm going to add to that, I'm going to click on the dimension tool and add the dimension to this and place this point via these two things. And so this way you're just saying, I threw a line down there, click on the line, okay, what am I doing to this? Oh yeah, I want to use this, and this dimension. And that workflow, object and action, is supposed to help you do this stuff a lot faster. And I have seen it work. However, there's been, obviously there's been pushback into the old Sketcher where it just doesn't feel as comfortable. You kind of have to let yourself kind of free up from that mindset that you had in the old Sketcher. And there are some new aspects, especially in NX 2512, where they have mechanism mode. And then I know in 2606, they're improving the Sketcher even more in that space where they're kind of combining a lot of the aspects of old and new so that you can do both at the same time. And you can currently have both an old sketch that was from an old part in something and edit it in the same part that you're now creating new sketches. So you can freely move back and forth between old and new. Obviously, I'm an advocate for the new sketching environment, and so it's a big training topic that I end up going through all the time. Also, synchronous modeling is another one where it may seem disconnected from general modeling most of the time, but synchronous modeling really is just a set of tools that you can add into your regular modeling workflow. And so I try and emphasize that in the training that I give. It's a set of tools that are pretty specific to NX CAD. They are direct modeling tools, and I'm a big fan of them. I just want to use them in everyday modeling. If I want to extrude something, maybe I'm pulling it out using one of my synchronous tools instead. It isn't historyless. There is a different version of historyless modeling that you can turn on inside the modeling, but it's not tied directly to synchronous modeling. You can use them just like you can an extrude or a revolve tool. There's going to be a way to go back and edit that synchronous feature that you added to your design. One of the nice aspects about synchronous modeling is that you'll be able to redesign any part in minutes or make fast edits while not really knowing the history of the part. So if it's an imported body, obviously it doesn't have a history, but even if it does, maybe you're working off of someone else's part and you have no idea how the sketches in here work. And so you're just like, well, I need this to be a little bit longer here, but I don't know exactly where that dimension is that controls that aspect of my design. I can just use synchronous and kind of design right on top of it and go forward. So that's another big part that I try to make sure I'm including in any kind of NX training, and then assemblies as well. So just knowing how to utilize and use assemblies, what NX is doing with assemblies. So one of the big aspects here is assembly load options. It's allowing you to tell NX, dictate NX exactly how I'm loading and opening my assembly files and even my part files. One of the things I like to emphasize in training is that there aren't file types in NX like there are in other CAD packages where everything in NX, pretty much everything, is a part file. It becomes an assembly when I throw a component in there, and then if I take that component out, it is no longer an assembly file. So it has a very flexible way of dealing with parts and designs. And so just utilizing and focusing on assemblies and what it can do for you, what NX can do for you in that space is really important. Reference sets and arrangements. Utilizing the environment for bottom-up assembly design compared to top-down, what that looks like, adding in that skeleton part that we have in other CAD packages. Like, we can do stuff like that in NX, so adding that as a part of the training is pretty important. As well as talking about wave interpart linking and just being able to share design space between components, how that works, going from component up into the assembly, or from the assembly down into the component, and using aspects of components to design around for the components you're creating. When I know what the content is of the training that I'm trying to put out there, so whether it be a specific topic or just foundational class, one of the most important tools that I have as a trainer to convey what I'm trying to tell the user to train as far as the usefulness and meaningfulness of a tool inside of NX is the activity. So those step-by-step activities that I can create, or at least things that I'm demonstrating and saying, hey, go and try and do this, really important for what I'm doing in training. So it's just helping me say, what is the main idea that I'm trying to get across? Which tool is being used? How does this activity fit in the workflow of the lesson plan? And then what else can be added to this activity that will unlock more aspects of NX for the user? So it might not have to be specific to the tool that we're trying to learn, but it'll just be some interesting user interface aspect of NX that I'm now incorporating into this activity as just, this is how you use this as you're doing something else, and we hadn't really talked about it before, and it'll just kind of click in someone's mind that, hey, we have this available. And so just adding as much of that stuff as I can into a single activity ends up being really efficient. And this is another area where utilizing AI has been extremely beneficial, just for finding all those different aspects that maybe I'm not thinking of, putting into an activity, how to structure it properly, how long activities might take based on what I'm asking the user to do. So with all those things in mind, let's look at an example of how I might set up an activity. So, and then keep in mind, like, I'm probably prompting, say, ChatGPT, or asking aspects of NX, investigating that, using AI, figuring out, okay, I'm going to be, creating this PowerPoint. And Copilot, I think, exists in PowerPoint. So I can use Copilot to say, what's the design of this activity look like? It'll move the words around. Just things that I might not think of as I'm designing up the training I'm trying to get across. Like, how do I want to communicate this the most efficient way and best way possible? And so here I'm designing an activity that is bridging the gap from something that we just learned, which is using datum feature tools to create those datum feature objects. And maybe this is at the very beginning of a feature modeling section. So we're taking a look at those, and then we're going to move into more designing tools like extrude. And so I want to include as much of that as I can into an efficient activity. So what commands and tools are we planning to use? We just went over the datum feature tools, as I mentioned, so let's utilize some of those to help us do something else within the context of using another tool. And so in this, I'm extruding a block, and I want to control how a hole goes down through my block. And it sounds pretty simple, but there's a lot of things that you can just throw in to that single activity that opens up a lot for everyone taking the class. So, we'll be using the sketcher as part of this activity. So things we have to consider is that, are we creating the sketch beforehand? Do we have the curves available before we jump into the extrude tool? Are we embedding the sketch directly into the extrude, and what that means as far as how clean our feature tree is, or how robust the model is going to be? Do I need to have access to that sketch outside of the extrude feature for other applications downstream? I also want to use those datum features, and so I just have to figure out, okay, do I want, how many of these can I include into a single activity? So one thing I like to add on to an early modeling activity is also just to note that we have control over what objects look like. And so we're going to take a look at maybe edit object display, change the color of an object, or we can even change the line style of an object. Or do we want to be able to see through the object? Just all this stuff that visually maybe I'm not thinking of that might help me communicate my design when it comes to presentations or being a part of an assembly. You can say, this object that I have in here isn't actually here. That's why I'm using phantom lines and I can see through it. But it's, it's there in my CAD model. It might just be a different aspect of the assembly. So just being able to communicate that stuff directly in NX is things that I like to throw into training activities. And so the main reason for, say, using datum features is that we're going to control this hole as we add it to the main body of our extrusion. Knowing that I want to have that included in the activity, I'll use PowerPoint to try and explain that properly and use Copilot to do that a little bit, or at least help me. That's where the trust comes into play, right? Is sure, AI can do a bunch of this stuff, but is it right? It's just like knowing if it's right or not is something that we're all probably still working on. All right, so this is just like a really, the little box there is how some of the slides that I put together will look sometimes, especially if I'm trying to create something that is instructor-led or even video-led. So I don't want to put too much information into a single slide. So it'll be almost step-by-step, but not quite. If the person isn't really paying attention to what I'm saying, what I'm demonstrating, they have access to the videos, I might be there in the room for them. They may or may not be able to figure out exactly what to do for the activity, which is part of the training thing. It's like we want it to be, I don't want to scare anyone away with the amount of stuff I'm putting into an activity. And then, so let's see. So I talked about this activity that I've been setting up. So it would go something like this as far as the demonstration. Let's see if I can. Do I have to back out of this to show it on my screen? Probably. All right, so I have NX up. I'm starting a new part file for this activity. And like I mentioned, we're going to be creating this extrusion of some kind. I'm just going to create a block, but I want to put a hole down through it, and I want to control the angle of that block. And so we're going to utilize some of the datum features that we just learned about. First, though, I'm going to either jump into the extrude tool. Here I can use sketch section or just simply select on a datum plane and it'll jump me into that sketch environment. Or I can use the sketch tool outside of the extrude tool to create that profile. Picking one over the other, if I change my mind downstream, I do have the ability to right-click on a feature and include and exclude or pull in and pull out those sketch features to utilize somewhere else. But in this one, I know I'm not going to probably need the sketch for other stuff, so we're just going to sketch a block in here. In the sketch environment, this is the new environment. We have that solve group, and so it is allowing me to just quickly sketch what I need. This is just a rectangle, so it's not going to take that long, but I can just set that up. And then as far as object in action, I'm going to say, okay, I want to maybe define a little bit of this width, maybe the height of this. And so I'm going to select on that and select on what I have there. And maybe that's going to be 600. And that first thing that popped up there, I probably should have paused a little more on that, but it's asking me if I want to scale that first change. So I can just sketch out really quickly the thing I think is, this is kind of what this looks like. This is what I'm going to extrude. And then I put a dimension on there. I realize way smaller or way bigger than I thought it was when I was sketching it out. And so making that first change to a dimension that's in my part will allow all the other curves to resize. So it's helpful with that. And then the height of this, so I want to pick on this and say how high do I want that to be. So we'll just go like that. And maybe selecting on these will give me this to put, divide that by half. And I could probably enter the formula of P8 divided by 2 to kind of keep that in case I want to change the width. But we're just going to create that block. I'm going to extrude it, certain height, click OK. So now I have this embedded sketch that's in here. It's not on my feature tree, but I can right-click on this, and I can make the sketch external or internal. So if I do need to utilize that sketch for some other extrusion, I can pull that out, even though I've embedded it in the first place with this here. So different aspects of what I might show as I'm doing this is we have the display tab up here with the tool called Edit Object Display. So So I mentioned that we have, when I jump into this, not that, jump into this, I can change the color to something that I want, say, kind of a blue. And maybe that just helps communicate more of what I'm doing, whatever the aspect of my design is, utilizing the fact that I can change the appearance of the objects I'm creating. So kind of demonstrating that, and then what am I trying to do here? So I'm using the hole tool. I'll refresh that to reset. And I want to put a hole down on the top of this part. And I want it to go all the way through the part, but I want to have some control over the angle, because I don't quite know what the angle of that hole is yet. And it depends on some stuff that hasn't been figured out. But I want to lay it out so that I have control over that and I can change it when I want to. So I need to have some objects in there to help me do that. And so using those datum features, whether it be a datum plane that I want to set up, let's say an angled plane here, I can just select the edge in the front face, create an angled plane, as well as, let's say, a datum axis that goes through that plane and through here. So I'm creating, just using that inferred selection, just knowing that if I pick two objects, it'll try and pick something that is intersecting. Or I picked the face and the edge, knowing that that's going to give me kind of an angular aspect to controlling my datum plane. So now I have this vector, and the reason I might want a vector is I want a certain direction for my hole to select that direction. And so that's what I have set up here. Another aspect of placing this is, you saw when I used the intersection for selecting and creating my datum axis, I picked this datum plane, which makes sense. I'm controlling the angle of this vector with that datum plane, but I also utilized the available datum plane that's in here on the origin, so the XY there. And the reason I picked that and not, say, the side of a part, so I could pick, the side of this block, it would end up, I'd end up in the same spot I am now with where that vector is going. However, because it's tied to the side of that block, if I change the shape of the block or something happens to the block, the datum axis is going to either fail or change its axis a little bit, it changes its degree, and it's going to point somewhere else. And I want to make sure I'm controlling what I think I'm controlling. So I'm picking correctly as I'm setting up these features. So now I have that vector that I want to use to control the hole that goes down into my part. So I can jump back into my hole here. And we're going to see right now under hole direction, I'm just using normal to face. That's going to be most of the time. That's the default, and that's most of the time what I'm going to use. And so I'm not going to really notice, when it's not normal to the face, because most of the time I'm putting it on a plate and it goes normal to the face. But in this case, I don't want it to be normal to the face. I want it to be doing something else. I want it to be maybe right on the center point of that and going down following the angle of this vector. Also, it needs to be a little bit bigger. So in the working window, after I place a hole, I can just do this really quickly. And I want to make sure it goes all the way through the part, but actually, as I change the angle of this, having a depth as a number might not work out for me. So I can take a look at my limit options in the hole and say down here under value, we're just going to go through the body. So no matter what I'm doing to my hole now, it's going all the way through. And what I can do with hole direction is, instead of normal to the face, which is what it currently is set to and defaults to, I can use a long vector. So if I use a long vector, looks like it's picking a vector for me, but I want to select this vector. And you will notice that I'm able to pick that. It has a nice little preview for me. Other things as I'm doing activities, especially if it's all early on in a foundational class or something, I'll kind of walk through different aspects of the command window here. So we have preview in most of these tools, but pretty much all of the tools will have show result. And the difference is there is that preview is going to show you a sometimes faceted version of what is going to happen, whereas show result will basically do a dry run through the calculations of actually creating that geometry. And so I've had it in situations where I'm adding blends and it looks like it's going to work according to my preview, and then you hit OK and something fails, where show result will show you that failure state without you having to close out of the dialog and get back in. stuff like that. So utilizing the dialog properly can help save time as well. But now I have this hole going down through my part. Maybe I want it to be even a little bit bigger. And there's a couple other aspects I want to consider here. Notice I'm in this sort of in-between world using the hole tool. Some of the other tools will be similar to this, where I'm not really in the sketch environment, but I'm not quite in the modeling environment either. I'm sort of in this in-between area where I'm setting up things that are in the sketch area. There is, under the position here for the hole tool, specifying a point, which is, it creates a sketch object of a point within a sketch. And so there's going to be an embedded sketch as part of this hole tool, and I can enter into that and place this sketch. So one of the things with the new sketcher is that we're looking at mechanism mode. And mechanism mode allows me to create curve objects using definition similar to what I might be doing in the old NX environment. And so it's not looking for those found relations in the background right now. It's just if there's a relation that I've added to something, it creates it as a persistent one that sticks there in the session. If I take this off, I now have access to relaxing relations and dimensions and relaxing dimensions. If I relax dimensions, let's see if this works with my P values here, but I want to take that point and put it there and make it so. And so if I'm relaxing it, I don't have to delete my dimensions and put them there. With these being P values, we're now looking at an over-constrained area, but I can use my sketch navigator to go take a look at what's going on there. It'll tell me, okay, there's some conflicting stuff here. We have the value plus the position that it's locked. And so maybe I change how these dimensions are being applied to avoid that. Maybe these are reference now. However I want to set that up. So I wanted to put the whole point placement on the center. Click Finish. It moves it there for me. And it looks like I changed some of the aspects here of my design. Another thing I want to mention with this is, because most of the time we're adding holes as normal to a face, we're not really thinking about how this is being cut into the part. Under settings on the hole tool, there is an extend start. And if I show the result here, it's clearly cutting all the way through, as a hole should. If I don't have extend start on, and I show the result, it's literally just giving me that subtraction solid that it creates and then subtracts from the part. And so it's cutting kind of halfway in that. And like I said, we don't necessarily see that all the time or be thinking about it all the time, because we're usually adding things that are normal to the face. And so I can undo that show result and say, no, I do want extend start there. Another thing I'll mention about the hole tool itself as we're doing activities like this is that I don't always have to have it subtract immediately from the thing I'm putting the hole on. I can create a whole subtraction solid, do some stuff to that subtraction solid, and then subtract it later, giving me a lot of flexibility in how my holes look. Maybe there's something I need to add to this hole that this hole tool just isn't quite giving me the correct thing. So I can go in here and add the groove I need or whatever it is, and adding it to a cylinder is easier than adding it to the inside of a hole, if that's the case. So for example, if I have this set to none and I show result, it's just giving me a whole solid that I can subtract later. In this case, though, I am subtracting this from the part. And the whole reason we were doing this activity is that we just use these datum planes to help control a hole after learning how to create datum planes. And so now I can use a really quick aspect of how parameters work in NX, where if I highlight the datum plane on my feature or my part navigator, my feature tree, and I go to details, it'll show me the expression or the P value here. And it'll say, oh, okay, the value of this is 33 degrees right now. So I can kind of zoom in here and, oh, I forgot to plug my computer in, but that's okay, I'm almost done. I can just change this really quickly and say, oh, that's supposed to be 45. And so I can change it, and it updates right there in real time. I don't have to worry about going into my datum plane, changing the value here, not seeing what the immediate change is, clicking OK, waiting for stuff to update. I can just go to my value that I want to change and say, okay, that needed to be more like that. And so now we're using that capability within NX, those p-values, the expressions that exist as I'm creating features and utilizing that to help control things as I create them. And go back to, oh yeah, there's a little Copilot button right there in PowerPoint. Back to this. All right, that will bring me to the end of what I'm going over for this presentation. I'm supposed to put this in here, so feel free to rate the session via a survey that's in there.